Hello, everybody. It's me, Ghost Bunny, and I'm finally back to reading the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. It goes by many, many names, so I'm just gonna say a couple of them. Maybe you'll find, maybe you'll know some of them. Modal Zushi, like I said, the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, MDZS, or the one you probably know the most, the one people mostly know is The Untamed. So yes, I'm back with it, with chapter 2. I don't know why I stopped reading. I think I was busy with life and I don't know what happened. Pero do not think that I'm not finished. That I'm not gonna finish it, because I am gonna finish it. So let's begin, because these chapters are quite long. I'm gonna be honest. I think that's why I because these chapters are quite long, and I already had another one that had long chapters. I didn't want to have two long chapters after another. Pero do not be scared, because I am here for you, and you are here for MDCS, baby. So a la two, a la 1, 2, 3. Chapter numero. Oh wait, oh stop here. I almost forgot to give my disclaimers. Oopsie. Starters, I have no affiliations with MXTX or with 7Cs. This is just us being, having a gay old gay time. I have no affiliations with any of them. So, yes, there is an official audiobook out there. This is not it. There's different versions of it running around. You can find them. You can find them on Billy if I'm sure. But yeah, I have no affiliations with any of that, and this is not an official audiobook. This is us just having a gay old gay time, and that is it. Segundo, I am not a native Chinese speaker. There's a high chance I may mispronounce a lot of the names, places, or just words in general. That's not me trying to make a mockery or make fun of the Chinese language. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I just do not speak it. And 3, yes, I do speak English, and yes, I can read English, but I will stumble a little bit with words. I leave them in because I think that's part of my charm, but not everybody finds it as charming. Just, I may stumble on some words. I'm not doing that on purpose. I'm really trying to read. English is not my native tongue. I'm a native Spanish speaker, so yeah, could probably be that. Pero yeah, those are my little disclaimers. Pero yeah, whatever. I don't know what to say. I don't know what I'm saying. You know what? You know what? I should be saying the words in the book. Let's just start reading. A la 1, a la 2, and now a la 3. Ding, 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 ding. Chapter numero 2 of MDZS. The Interactable. Ooh. Oh yeah, previously we left off on Wei Wuxian coming back to life. So yeah. Wei Wuxian had only opened his eyes when someone kicked him. A voice thundered in his ears. Playing dead? He almost coughed up blood from the kick. His head hit the ground, and with his face turned up, he thought hazily, "You've got some nerve daring to kick me, the patriarch." Wei Wuxian had already lost count of the number of years it had been since he last heard a live person speak. Never mind such awful caterwauling. He was dizzy, and the cracked voice of a young man was rattling between his ears. Think for a moment whose land you're living on, whose rice you're eating, and whose money you're spending. So what if I took a few things of yours? They should have been mine in the first place. Soon after, there was the clamoring. There was the clamoring noise of chests and cabinets alike being ransacked. It was a good moment before Wei Wuxian's eyes could focus. A dim ceiling came into view, as did an unfortunate-looking face with a greedy glare. That face was spraying spittle all over him. "And you dare go tattle on me? You think I'm actually afraid of you tattling? Do you actually think anyone in this house could take your side?" Two large men who looked like servants came over. "Young master, everything's smashed." "So fast?" The quacking youth questioned. "There wasn't much stuff in the There wasn't much stuff in this broken shack anyways, the servant replied. The quacking youth was extremely pleased. He turned to Wei Wuxian, pointing to so hard that the man that he Jesus, I'm gonna read that sentence again. He turned to Wei Wuxian, pointing so hard that the man had that the man that he was Jesus Christ. Look, he pointed really hard. He was practically jabbing his fingers up his nose and into his brain. Don't tell me! I dare you! Who are you playing dead for anyways? As if anyone would actually give a crap about you of all this junk and waste paper. I've smashed everything. Let's see what else you got to go paddle on me with. Huh? Think you're all that just because you went to a cultivation sect for a few years? Well, didn't you get kicked out like the street dog you are? Presently half dead, Wei Wuxian thought to himself, it's not pretend. I've actually been dead for many years. Who was this? Where was this? When had he ever done something like forcefully possess the body of another? After having kicked the man, ransacked the house, and spent all his temper, the quacking youth strutted out the door along with two servants smashing the door behind him. He ordered in a loud voice, keep proper watch. Don't let him come out to embarrass people. The servants outside the door all headed once the man had gone. Silence settled both inside and out of the house. Wei Wuxian wanted to sit up, but his limbs would not obey him. So he lay back down and flipped over. His head continued to spin as he looked at the strange surroundings and the mess on the floor. Next to him was a copper mirror that had been tossed onto the ground, and Wei Wuxian snatched it up. A dreadfully pale face appeared in the mirror. Two large blots of red were smeared on unevenly on each cheek. If he were to stick out a little long, wait, if he were to stick out a long and vividly red tongue, then he'd be the very picture of a hanged ghost. Wei Wuxian tossed the mirror aside, a little disgusted to be honest. He wiped his face and found his hands smeared with white powder. Fortunately, it wasn't that his body had been born strange, but rather the penchant of the previous owner, a full-grown man with a face heavily caked in makeup and sloppily applied at that. Oh yes, because Wei Wuxian has plenty of proper makeup techniques. He should teach me. This shocked some energy back into him. Wei Wuxian, who was finally able to sit up, only then did he notice that the circle of a spell array beneath him, The array was scarlet and crooked, seemingly hand-drawn using blood. The array was scarlet and crooked, seemingly hand-drawn using blood as the medium. It was still damp, emitting a metallic stench. There were wrapped and crazed spells drawn within the array that had been somewhat smudged by his body, but the remaining shapes and characters were gruesome in their evil intent. Wei Wuxian had been called by titles such as Super Evil Lord, the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, and whatnot for years, so naturally he was very familiar with obviously devious arrays such as this. It wasn't that he had robbed anyone of their body. He had been offered one. Now that's different. Jesus. The nature of this, and I quote, sacrificial ritual, end quote, was a type of curse. The caster was to harm themselves with a weapon, making cuts on their body and using their own blood to draw the array and write the spell within. They would never sit in the center of the circle and give up their mortal body to to evil spirits using the oh wait yeah they would then sit in the center of the circle and give up their mortal body to evil spirits, using the annihilation of their soul as the price to summon a nefarious malicious ghost. This was all done in order to request the fulfillment of a wish. Thus, it was the opposite of a possession. So, Everybody, Wei Wuxian is innocent. He did not possess this man. This man said, "Half my body, do 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 do, do it do do do. I don't know the song. Touch my body, lay me on the floor." Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna take a photo of this beautiful drawing. Oh my goodness. You get to see. I don't know if it's Mo Yu or Wei Wuxian at this point, but it is Mo Yu's body. He's in the middle, so you guys can see it. Like I'm not that good at describing images, but it's right there. It's absolutely beautiful. Oh my god, like just amazing. While both were forbidden magics of ill repute, the difference was that the former was less popular than the latter. After all, few wishes were so strongly desired as to make someone willingly sacrifice everything they had. This was why the technique had been nearly lost after centuries of disuse. The examples recorded in ancient books had only a handful of cases that were who were backed up by reliable evidence, and every single one of them had been for revenge. Every malicious ghost summoned by the ritual had fulfilled the caster's wish perfectly, in cruel and bloody ways. Wei Wuxian refused to accept this, since, you know, when was he categorized as a nefarious malicious ghost? While he had a fairly poor reputation and died an extremely tragic death, he hadn't haunted the living for one, and he never sought vengeance for two. He he could swear there was not a single wandering ghost in the world who was more decent and honorable and honest than he was. But the tough thing was that the sacrificial ritual followed the caster first and foremost. So it didn't matter how much he objected. He was already inside this body, which was a silent acknowledgement that both parties had formed a contract, even though he didn't sign it and he didn't ask for it. Uh, he had to fulfill the wish of the caster, or the curse would rebound, destroying the possessor's primordial spirit and extinguish it forever. Wei Wuxian yanked his sash loose and raised his arm to inspect them. Sure enough, both his wrists had been slashed with a sharp tool, leaving them covered in crisscrossing lacerations. The bleeding had already stopped, but Wei Wuxian knew these were not normal injuries. If he didn't fulfill the caster's wish, then these wounds would be unable to heal, and they would worsen the longer this dragged on. If the deadline for fulfillment was missed, then he who had accepted this vessel would be ripped apart in both body and soul alike. He triple checked that there was no mistake and cried, "This is ridiculous!" mentally 10 times before finally rising to his feet, with difficulty supporting himself against the wall. This house certainly was big, but it was empty and shabby. The bedding was empty, a sour smell. Ew. Who knew how many days had gone by since it was last changed? There were there was a bamboo basket for trash in the corner that had been kicked over earlier, and both trash and waste papers were strewn across the floor. Wei Wuxian noticed there seemed to be ink marks on the crumpled paper, so he picked them up in passing. He opened it to take a look, and sure enough, it was covered in words. He quickly went around to collect all the balls of paper. They were probably written by the owner of this body to vent his frustrations. Some of the sentences were very incoherent and disordered, but the anxiety and nervousness were abundantly clear. Wei Wuxian patiently examined each sheet, and the more he looked, the more he felt something was amiss. Through some guesswork, he figured out a few things. First, the owner of this body was named Mo Yu, and this place was called the Mo Estate. Mo Yu's grandfather, on his mother's side, was from a rich family in this area. The family wasn't large, and the man was not, fated for a son. After years of trying, He still only had 2 daughters. The name of the second daughter wasn't mentioned, but either way, the eldest daughter was born of the lawful wife. Thus, they were looking for a husband to marry into their family name. Although the second daughter was exceptional in appearance, she was born of a servant, which was why the Mo family had originally planned to marry her out without giving much thought on the groom. Who would have thought she was fated for a fortunate encounter? When she was 16, the head of a prominent clan was passing by and fell in love with her at first sight. The two made the Mo Manor the site of their relationship, and a year later, the second daughter gave birth to a son. This was Mo Yu. The inhabitants of the Mo estate would normally have held such an event in contempt, but people at the time worshipped cultivators. In the eyes of the mundane folk, cultivation clans that, proposed immortality were loved by the heavens, mysterious and noble. Furthermore, that prominent clan leader would finally support this new outer family branch of his every so often. So naturally, these circumstances were special. Not only did the Mo family consider this an honor, but the others were extremely envious too. However, the good days did not last. That wandering clan leader was only hungry for the novelty of fresh meat, and he was over it after 2 years, coming to visit less and less frequently. After Mo Yu turned 4, the man never appeared yet again. Damn, is he my dad? In those passing years, the Moa state's opinion changed again. The contempt and mockery returned, now with added disdain and pity. Second Lady Mo refused to accept this, believing firmly that the prominent clan leader would not turn a blind eye to his own son, and sure enough, when Mo Yu turned 14, that clan leader sent over a grand party to follow to a And sure enough, when Mo Yu turned 14, that clan leader sent over a grand party to officially take him back. Second Lady Mo's head was held again high. Although she could not go with them, this event swept away all the grievances she had. Feeling proud and elevated, she proclaimed proudly to everyone she saw that her son would definitely become a leader of cultivation sects in the future, rise to the top and bring glory to the ancestors. Thus, the people of the Moa state changed their opinion for the third time. However, Mo Yu was driven out before he managed to cultivate a claim and success his father, and driven out in the most shameful way. Mo Yu was a cut sleeve, a homosexuals, and he was so audacious as to harass his fellow peers. With this scandal exposed at the fact that he possessed only average talent and no real achievements in cultivation, the sect had no reason to keep him. Adding frost to snow, something had upset Mo Yu. When he returned home, it was as a madman. His mental state had been upend as if he had been scared silly. Having read to this point, Wei Wuxian's brow twitched a couple times. The cut sleeve matter aside, the man was a lunatic too. No wonder he was smeared enough powder. No wonder he had smeared enough powder on his face to look like a hanged ghost. No wonder no one thought it strange that there was such a large bloody spell array on the ground. Mo Yu could probably smear blood all over this house from the floor tiles up to the walls and to the ceiling, and no one would think it weird because everyone knew he was crazy. Mo Yu returned to his old house. He was bombarded with ridicule. This time it seemed to this it, this time it seemed the situation was unsalvageable, unable to take this blow. Second Lady Mo was choked to death by her own unappeasable outrage. So she took her own life. Yikes. At this time, Mo Yu's grandfather had already passed, and the one managing the household was First Lady Mo. This Madame Mo had never been able to stand her little sister, and she scorned the sister's bastard son. She had a single son herself by the name of Mo Zijuan, the one who had, the quacking boy that ransacked Mo Yu's house. Yeah, him. When Mo Yu first left with such impressive fanfare, such impressive fanfare, sorry, First Lady Mo had felt that they now possessed something of a family tie to that prominent cultivation sect, and had hoped the in, cultivators envoys would bring Mo Zedong along with them too. Of course, she had been rejected, or rather ignored. Because honestly, I've ignored her too, because she's annoying. Duh. This wasn't like selling cabbages in the market, buy one get one free. Who knew where this family got this confidence? I don't know. But they all possessed a bizarre idea. They firmly believed that Mo Zedong had potential, that he had talent, and that if he were the one who had gone with the cultivators, oh well, then he would have been recognized for his worth for sure, unlike his failure of a cousin. Although Mo Zedong had been young when Mo Yu left, he had been repeatedly indoctrinated to believe this nonsense without a single doubt. Thus, he caught Mo Yu every other day to humiliate him, cursing him for having robbed him of his path of cultivation. Yet he remained enamored with the talismans, the pills, and the little spiritual devices that he had brought back from the cultivation sect, and would take them all for himself, breaking them as he willed. While Mo Yu was often in the throes of madness, he knew that he was being humiliated. He tried his best to endure it. Time and time again, but Mo Zedong's behavior only worsened, practically practically emptying the entire house. At last, Mo Yu had enough. He finally stammered a complaint to his uncle and aunt, which was why Mo Zedong had, come knocking today looking for trouble. The words of the paper were tiny and cramped. Wei Wuxian's eyes were sore from reading all this, and he thought to himself, what kind of hellish life was he living? No wonder Mo Yu had preferred to end it, bring his body to summon a malicious ghost to avenge him. After his eyeballs started feeling better, it became his head's turn to ache. Technically, the caster of this array had to mentally recite their wish as, the evil spirit summoned. Wei Wuxian should have been able to hear the details of his request. However, this forbidden magic had probably been secretly copied off a book with missing pages. It was incomplete, and Mo Yu had missed a step, although Wei Wuxian could guess that he most likely sought vengeance against the Mo family. How exactly did he want it done? To what extent? Take back what was taken? Break up his family? Or, well, now he wanted to kiss and tell. Maybe he wanted to wipe them out entirely. Hmm? 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 It was It was most likely wiping out the family. After all, anyone who had been in that circumstance. Wait. After all, anyone who had been in the cultivation world would know the words most often used to describe Wei Wuxian were treacherous, mad. Was there anyone who better fit the description of fiendish? Since the man had dared to summon him by name, his wish was definitely not something easily granted. Wei Wuxian said helplessly, "But you've got the wrong person." At first, he wanted to wash his face and gaze with reverence upon the dead contents contents that had once belonged to its former owner. However, there was no water inside of this house, not even drinking water. What's more, Wei Wuxian figured the only container around was for, well, lavatory purposes and not for washing up. He tried pushing the door, but it was barred from the outside, probably to prevent him from, running amok. There was not a single thing that could allow him the slightest bit of joy in being reincarnated. He might as well meditate for a while and get used to this new body. An entire day passed this way. When he opened his eyes once more, there was sunlight seeping into the house through the cracks of the window. Although he could get up and walk, his head was still spinning, and it didn't appear to be getting better. Wei Wuxian was puzzled. This motion used cultivation spirit. This motion used cultivated spiritual power is so minuscule. It might be completely overlooked. There's no reason why I can't manipulate this body. So why is it so difficult to use? Basically, his cultivation ability is absolute bullshit, but it's difficult to control and manipulate as you wish. So it's weak, but also difficult to use. It's a weird type of weird. It wasn't until a strange noise sounded from his stomach that he realized it had nothing to do with spiritual power. It was simply that this body, not trained for fasting, was, well, hungry. If he delayed seeking for food any longer, he might just become the first malicious ghost in history to die of hunger immediately after being summoned. So the ghost will actually make fun of you. Wei Wuxian took a deep breath and raised his foot, but just as he was about to kick the door open, there was suddenly the sound of footfalls on the other side drawing near. Someone gave the door a kick, which was followed by an annoyed call. Mealtime! While those were the words, it didn't appear the door was going to open at all. Wei Wuxian looked down just in time to see a small bowl be heavily set down before a small slat at the bottom of the door. The servant outside then added, "Hurry up! What's the hold up? Put the bowl out when you're done." The slat was smaller than a dog flap, not large enough to allow people to go in and out, but bowls could be passed through there with, two. There were two dishes and one bowl of rice that looked awfully disgusting. Wei Wuxian bitterly stirred the chopsticks that were stabbed into the rice. The Yiling patriarch had returned to life, only to be kicked down and yelled at. Huh. That first meal to welcome him that first meal to welcome him back was cold leftovers. Who would believe him if he was who would believe him if he told them? Oop. What had happened to this body rain? What had happened to this bloody rain? His absolute massacres, his unadulterated annihilation of the sex. Truly, out of the mountains, a tiger can be bullied by a dog. In shallow waters, a dragon can be mocked by a shrimp, and a plucked phoenix is lower than a chicken. Stripped of their privileges, the strong will be belittled by the weak. Oh. Just then, the voice of the servant outside the door was heard once more, but this time it was a laugh that sounded as if it came from a completely different person. Ah, Ding! Come over here! A delicate and frail female voice answered from a distance. Atong, did you come to deliver food for that person in there again? Atong clicked his tongue. Why else would I come to this miserable courtyard? Addie's voice was at the door, much closer now. You only make deliveries once a day and no one scolds you, even if you slack off. Every now and then, just So why are you frowning at and so why are you frowning at being so free? Look at me, so busy with errands that I can't even go out to play. Aton complained. It's not like delivering meals is the only thing I do, and you still dare to go out right now, huh? There are so many walking corpses roaming about that every household has their doors firmly shut. Wei Wuxian was crouched down by the door, pushing around the contents of the bowl in his hand with two chopsticks of different lengths, listening as he ate. It seemed like things hadn't been peaceful here at the Mo estate. At the Mo estate, there was walking corpses, as per their name. They were the Walking Dead, reanimated corpses that were low level and they were commonplace. Their eyes were usually glazed, their movements sluggish. They were fairly harmless nonetheless. That were, in that were enough to terrify average folks, and their putrid smell alone was enough to make one fill a pot full of puke. So yeah. However, Wei Wuxian, oh god, they were the easiest to manipulate and the most obedient of puppets. In fact, it even felt somewhat endearing to suddenly hear about them yet again. Atong appeared to have winked. You have to take me along if you want to go out, so I can, protect you, baby. And someone here was trying to flirt, getting to her handful. Adin cut him off dismissively. You protect me? Please, can you actually fight those creatures off? If I can't fight them off, then no one can, Atong grumbled. Adin laughed. How do you know other people can't fight them off? Let me tell you, delegates from the cultivation sect have actually arrived to our Mill Manor estate today. I hear they're from an incredibly prominent clan. The madam is receiving them in the main hall right this minute. Everyone in town has gathered to watch. They're all so curious. You you hear that noise? They might order me around again in a bit, so I don't have time to play with you. Wei Wuxian listened intensely. Sure enough, there was the faint sound of commotion. After a moment's contemplation, he got up and kicked the bar. He got up and kicked the bar, locking the door, which broke with a crack. The two servants, flirting with each other, screamed in surprise when the door was suddenly flung open. Wei Wuxian tossed the bowl and chopsticks aside as he stalked out. But the sunlight blinded him. The glare also caused a small pinching pain on his skin, so he raised his hands to his brows and closed his eyes for a few minutes. Well, for a moment. Atong had screamed louder than Ding a moment ago, but when he looked closer, he realized it was that lunatic everyone could bully. His courage returned. Feeling he must regain the dignity he'd just lost, he jumped over and waved, showing Wei Wuxian like one would a dog. He yelled, "Get out of here! Shoo! Shoo! Go back in! What are you doing outside?" Not even beggars or flies have received more unsightful treatment. This was probably how these servants had treated Mo Xuan Yu in the past, and they grew even more impertinent when he didn't retaliate. Yeah. Wei Wuxian gave Atong a light kick, sending him tumbling, and laughed. Who are you trying to humiliate, huh? With that, he headed east following the noise. Both the East Hall and the East Courtyard were crowded with people, and just as Wei Wuxian stepped into the yard, he heard a woman whose voice rose louder than the others. We have a junior at home who also had an affinity for cultivation once. That must have been Madame Mo, who was trying to build connections with cultivation clans. Wei Wuxian he didn't bother waiting for her to finish before he languidly squeezed into the crowd, entering the main hall. He waved enthusiastically, "Here, here, over here, over here, here, here." In the main seat of the hall sat a middle-aged woman. Well, she was well maintained and sumptuously dressed, well dressed, let's go with that. This was Madame Mo. The one sitting below was her husband, who had married into the family, and across from him were several white-clad youths with swords on their backs. When a disheveled, unkempt weirdo suddenly emerged from the crowd, conversation came to an abrupt stop. However, Wei Wuxian seemed to take no notice of the frozen atmosphere. He said unabashedly, "Who called me just now? Huh? The one with an affinity for cultivation? Isn't that me?" There was too much powder on his face, and it cracked when he smiled, flaking as it fluttered off. One of the white-clad youths snorted, almost laughing out loud, but he restrained himself when the other youth, who appeared to be the leader of the bunch, shot him a disappointing look. "Don't you dare." Wei Wuxian snuck a glimpse at them and was somewhat taken aback. At first, he had thought an incredibly prominent clan was but the exaggerated praise of an unlearned servant, but the people here really were cultivation disciples worth their name. Who would have thought? Hmm. Graceful sleeved and light airly slash. Jesus Christ! I'm gonna read that again. Graceful sleeves and light or air. Graceful sleeved and light airily sashed, these youths were exceptionally pleasing to the eye, transcendent and polished. Judging by their uniform alone, it was obvious they came from the Lan clan of Guzu. They were disciples with blood ties to the Lan family as well, since every single one of them had 2 centimeter wide white ribbon pattern with rolling clouds tied around their foreheads. Elegance and righteousness was the motto of the Lan clan of Gusu, and this forehead ribbon symbolized self-restraint. The rolling clouds were the Lan family's insignia, and guest cultivators or sect disciples of outside families affiliated with the prominent clan were only allowed to wear ribbons without the pattern. Wei Wuxian always cringed every time he spotted someone from the clan family, cause he'd often complained under his breath, in his previous life at least, that their uniforms looked like funeral clothes, so he knew he wasn't mistaken now. It had been a long time since Madame Mo had seen this nephew of hers, and it took a while before she was able to recover from her shock. After realizing who this heavily powdered person was, she was furious, but she couldn't lose her composure, so she hissed at him. She hissed at her husband. "Who let him get out? Get him out of here!" Her husband responded with an apologetic smile and got up with a glum look, ready to seize Wei Wuxian. All of a sudden, Wei Wuxian dropped down without warning and latched firmly onto the ground, immovable. No matter how he was pulling or dragged, no one, not even the servants who were called into, help, could do anything. If not for the outsiders who were present, they would have, started to kick him already. Basically, if no one was there, they probably would have started smacking the poor kid, because they're horrible people. They're just horrible people. That's what else can I say? Like, if the cultivators, if the Landsec wasn't there, they would have already beat every inch of his body. Madame Mo's face was growing darker and darker, and the husband was drenching in sweat as well. He yelled, "You damn lunatic! If you don't go back right now, be careful, or I'll put you in your place." Although everyone from the Mo estate knew there was a young master in the Mo family who had gone mad, Mo Xuan Yu had withdrawn into the gloomy house of his, for many years, afraid to see anyone. Now that they saw how both his appearance and his actions resembled those of a raging monster, They started to whisper amongst themselves, excited to watch this spectacle unfold. Wei Wuxian spoke up. I can go back if you want. He pointed at Mo Zijuan, but you have to make him return everything he's ever stolen from me first. Mo Zijuan never thought this lunatic would have the gall. He thought the guy he He'd taught the guy a lesson just a few days ago, only to have him turn around and expose him here today. His face changed colors as he exclaimed, "You're lying! Since when have I ever stolen anything of yours? Why would I need to steal any of your stuff?" Right, Wei Wuxian agreed. You didn't steal, you snatched. Madame Mo could now tell Madame Mo could now tell that Mo Xuanyu had obviously come prepared. His mind was perfectly clear, and he was bent on humiliating them. Shocked and livid, she accused him sharply. You fully intend to wreak havoc here today, isn't that right? Wei Wuxian looked confused. But he stole my stuff, snatched it from me, even is asking for it all back considered wreaking havoc? Mo Zedong grew agitated, raising his leg to kick Wei Wuxian before Madame Mo could answer. However, one of the sword-carrying, white-clad youths moved his finger slightly, and Mo Zedong immediately lost his balance. The kick rushed past Wei Wuxian, missing the mark, and the boy tripped over himself. However, Wei Wuxian still tumbled and rolled as if he really had been kicked. He even ripped open his robes, all revealing on his chest the footprint left behind by Mo Zedong's kick the day after. The villagers of the Mo estate were enjoying the show immensely. Excitement filled the crowd. There was no way Mo Xuanyu could have kicked himself to create that footprint, and no matter what, he was still a member of the Mo family. What a vicious household! The boy hadn't been this crazy when he first returned, so it was probably the family's doing. Either way, it wasn't like they were, the ones being beaten. So as long as there was a show to watch, all the better. Thus, this spectacle was surely more interesting than the arrival of the cultivators. With so many eyes watching, the youth couldn't be beaten and he couldn't be kicked out. Madame Mo had no choice but to forcefully smooth the whole debacle over with fury thick in her throat. She said impassively, "What steal? What snatch? Such ugly accusations. We are a family. It's nothing but borrowing. Yuan is your younger brother. So if he takes a few things of yours as a elder brother, will you be the stingy? Throwing a childish tantrum and embarrassing everyone over such a small matter. It's not like he wasn't going to return your things. Oh, little note, they're cousins, but they're referred to as brothers because, family and how they address things. It's a Chinese thing, but yeah. The white-clad youths started The white-clad youth stared at each other in dismay, and one of them almost choked on his tea. The disciples who grew up with the Lan clan of Gusu were raised in refined elegance, so they had probably never encountered such a farce, nor heard such a brilliance. Today's events were probably widening their horizons. This was a learning moment. It's like they take a rich kid to the slums and they're like, see, this could be you if you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. The tragedy. What sadness. Ooh. Wei Wuxian laughed maniacally, in his mind at least, and extended his hand. Give them back! Give them back! Come on, give them back then! Of course, Mo Zedong couldn't return anything. All the items were long since tossed out of, or torn apart, and even if he could have returned them, he wouldn't have done so willingly. Red in the face, he cried out in protest. Mom! He scolded at her. Are you going to let him insult me like this? Madame Mo glowered at him, signaling him Not to make this scene any worse than it was, unexpectedly, Wei Wuxian spoke up again. While we're on the topic, not only should he not have stolen my stuff, he shouldn't have done so in the middle of the night. Everyone knows I like men. Even if he has no shame, I know not to make myself suspicious. Ooh! Madame Mo drew in a sharp breath and yelled, "What are you spewing in front of the village folks? How shameless! Ajuan is your cousin. He's your little cousin." He's not that little, bro. Like the way she talks, you would think the kid's like what, 12 or like he's like what, maybe like a couple of months younger. Like I do not put it past him being like almost the same age. Like seriously. Like woman, you're talking like he's a child. Like obviously I don't support incest, but woman, your little boy isn't little. He's just annoying. Like he has the mentality of a 12-year-old, but he isn't one. When it came to outrageous behavior, Wei Wuxian was an expert in the past life. He had to maintain some sort of. Wait, let me read that again. When it came to outrageous behavior, Wei Wuxian was an expert. In his past life, he'd had to maintain some form of decorum so people couldn't accuse him of having a poor upbringing. But now, he was a lunatic anyway, so you know what? Look, people already thought he was a lunatic, so why hide it? Yeah, like, so what did he care for shame? Like, they already thought he was crazy. You know what? Fuck it. He could go wild and cut loose to his heart's content. He stiffened his neck and said outright, he knew he was my little cousin, but he still didn't observe Jesus. He knew he was my little cousin, but he still didn't observe proper proper proper. He didn't observe properly, goddammit, and keep his distance. So, who is the most shameless on here? I don't care if you don't care about your reputation, but I still care about mine. I still gotta find myself a good man. I still gotta get me some good. Woo ha! I still need to get myself a man. Mo Zedong roared, raising a chair to hurl at Wei Wuxian's way. Seeing that he'd finally snapped, Wei Wuxian quickly scrambled up to go hide. The chair broke into pieces upon impact with the ground. The spectators, Jesus, the spectators crowding in and out of the East Hall were waiting with uncontrollable delight to watch the Mo family be disgraced, but they all quickly dispersed once things got violent. Afraid they might be injured. Like, I don't want to be in the splash zone. Get me out of here. Wei Wuxian ducked toward the youth from the Lan family, who were completely dumbfounded by what was unfolding, crying as, he did so. You see, he's hitting me even though he stole my stuff. How heartless. Mo Zedong chased him over, ready to lunge, but the leader of the youth stopped him. This Gongzi, we can talk this out. Seeing that the youth intended to protect the lunatic, Madame Mo grew apprehensive. She forced a smile. This young man is my younger sister's son. He's a little unstable here, huh? Everyone at the Mo estate knows he's crazy. He's always saying strange things, so please don't take him seriously. Esteemed cultivators, you mustn't. But before she could finish, Wei Wuxian poked his head out from behind the youth. Who said I can't be taken seriously? From now on, if anyone tries to steal my stuff, I'm gonna chop off an arm for every time they do. Just try me. Mo Zedong was being held back by his father at first, but when he heard this, his anger flared up again. Wei Wuxian darted out the door like a fish, taunting him with a la 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 as he went. The youth quickly blocked the door right after and changed the topic, assuming a serious face to talk business. Okay then, we will be borrowing your esteemed West Courtyard for tonight. Please remember exactly what I said earlier. Lock all the doors and shut all windows tight after dusk. Do not come out for any activities, especially not near the West Courtyard. Like he's like, okay, but anyways, back on topic. Madame Mo was shaking with rage, but it wouldn't have been courteous to push the youth aside despite him blocking her, so she could only reply, "Yes, yes, thank you, thank you." Mosi Juan was in a state of disbelief. "Mom, are you gonna let that lunatic get away with slandering me in public? Didn't you say yourself that he was only a mere—" "Shut your mouth!" Madame Mo cut him off sharply. "Can you not wait until we're back inside? You're embarrassing me in front of the cultivators." Mosi Juan had never suffered such a wrong before, nor had he ever nor had he ever been humiliated this way. He had especially never been scolded by his mother like this. He cried furiously, "That lunatic is dead!" After Wei Wuxian was done letting loose, he went out to the main entrance of the manor and strolled around the Mo estate to show his face, scaring numerous passersby and enjoying himself while he was at it. He began to understand the joys of being a madman, and was even starting to, be pleased with the hanging ghost makeup, not wanting to wash it off. "It's not like there's water around anyway, so I'll let it be." He fixed his hair and glanced at the wrist. There was no indication that the cuts were fading or healing at all, which meant that the, you know, thriftling revenge of venting anger on Motion Yu's behalf was far from enough. Did he really have to slaughter the entire Mo family? To be honest, that wouldn't have been anything different, well, at least difficult to do. Wei Wuxian pondered this, and he sauntered back to the Mo manor. As he snuck past the west courtyard with small quick steps, he noticed the land disciples on top of the rooftops, and wall eaves gathered in somber discussion. He snuck back again with those small quick steps and looked up, watching them intensely. While the land clan of Gusu was a major part of the coalition that had come to besiege him in the past, those juniors hadn't yet been born at the time, or if they had, they probably would have been only a few years old, so that event had nothing to do with them. Wei Wuxian stood there and observed, wanting to see how they had planned on handling the situation. As he looked on, he suddenly felt something amiss. Why did those black flags being flown on the rooftop and wall eaves look so familiar? The flags was called the Spirit Attraction Flag. If it was stuck on a living person, then it would attract even if it was stuck on a living person, it would attract every dark spirit, every vengeful ghost, every fierce corpse, and all such manner of evil to attack said person. Since wearing a flag was akin to becoming a live target, the flag was also called a target flag. It could also be stuck on a building, but said building had to have at least a living person within, and the range of the target would increase to include all people within the building. Since yin energy swirled around the area where these flags were planted like a black whirlwind, they were also known as black wind flag. Those youths were setting up the flag formation and had told others not to go near, so they had to intend they had the intent to lure the walking corpses there to capture them all at once, okay? As for why the flags looked familiar, well, how could they not? The creator of the spirit attracting flags was the very Yiling patriarch himself. It appeared that despite how the cultivation world had demanded Wei Wuxian's demise, they nevertheless had no qualms about making use of his inventions. So they didn't like him, but they really liked using the he invented. Shame, shame. One of those disciples on the rooftop noticed him watching and chided him. "Go back, this is not a place you should be." Though he was being ordered to shoot, it was done with good intentions, and the tone of voice employed was also greatly different. Well, it was different from the whole most servants, The people at the mall, they weren't really known for their chivalry. But these guys, they were okay. They seemed at least nice. While the youth was off his guard, Wei Wuxian hopped up and plucked a flag. Greatly alarmed, that Greatly alarmed, that disciple jumped down the wall to chase after him. "Don't touch that! It's not for you!" Wei Wuxian hollered as he ran, looking completely like a lunatic, his hair flying loose and disheveled arms waving and legs skipping. "Finders keepers! I want this! It's mine now!" The disciple quickly caught up with him and grabbed his arm. "Give it back, or else, I'll hit you!" Wei Wuxian clutched the flag tightly, refusing to let go. The leader of the group that was setting up the flag formation was alerted by the commotion and also came fluttering down from the rooftops. "Jingyi, let it go. Retrieve the flag nicely. There is no need to start a dispute." "Shizu, I didn't hit him for real," Lang Jingyi complained. "Look at him. He's messed up the flag formation." During their push and pull, Wei Wuxian had swiftly finished inspecting the spirit attraction flag. The drawn pattern they were correct, and none of the spells were missing either. There were no mistakes, and so no mishaps could occur in the flags were used. The only issue was that the person who drawn the flags was not very experienced, so the spell could only attract an so it could only attract any evil and walking corpses within a 2.5 radius at most. But that would be enough. So it wasn't super powerful. It could just attract some spirits, not all. But it was good enough for now. Got it. Lan Shizu, Lan Shizu turned to him with a smile. "Mo Gongzi, it's getting late, and we will be starting to catch walking corpses here soon. It is dangerous at night. You'd best hurry back to your chambers, please." Wei Wuxian sized up the youth. He sized him up like, "Let me see, boy." The boy was gentle in disposition, refined and elegant, noble in his bearing, with a light grin curving to the corners of his lips. This was a good sprout, very worthy of encouragement. And Wei Wuxian mentally gave him a nod of approval. Oh, he's a good boy. He's so cute and adorable. I love him. The child had set up the flag formation in a proper and orderly manner, and his upbringing really was quite commendable as well. Wei Wuxian wondered who amongst the terrifying group full of uptight stick-in-the-muds known as the Lan clan had managed to raise such a junior. Lan Qizui, I'm sorry, Lan Shizu added, "This flag." Before he could finish, Wei Wuxian tossed the spirit attraction flag onto the ground and humped. "What's so good about this crabby flag? I can draw better." He then took off right after. The junior who were on the rooftop watching the show burst out laughing at his shameless declaration so righteously that they almost fell off the rooftop. That's actually funny. Lan Jingyi also laughed out in exasperation, then picked up the flag of the ground, dusting it off. "What a lunatic!" "Don't say that," Lan Shizu chided at him. "Let's go back and help now, please. Just stop." As for Wuxian, he wandered idly about for a while. It wasn't until after dark that he returned to Mo Chuanyu's little court courtyard. Can I read? Answer will surprise none of you. The answer is no. The door latch was snapped without anyone to clean up the mess. He ignored it and picked somewhat clean spot in the room. He picked up a clean spot in the room before sitting down and continuing to meditate. Yet, unexpectedly, it hadn't reached the morning hours when a noisy complaint outside pulled him out of his meditative state. A clamor of footsteps mixed with a wailing and screaming was rapidly approaching, and Wei Wuxian heard these cries repeated. "Break in and drag him out! Report him to the authorities! Who cares about the authorities? Just beat him up to death!" Uh-oh. He opened his eyes just as a number of servants charged in. The entire courtyard was lit up as bright as day, and someone was shouting, "Drag that murdering lunatic to the main hall and make him pay with his life!" Wei Wuxian's first thought was, did something go wrong with those youths' flag formation? The fuck? The smallest carelessness is the smallest carelessness in the usage of the invention of his invention could cause disaster, which was why he had earlier purposely gone to verify whether the spirit attraction flags was properly drawn. Thus, when those large hands came to drag him out of the door, Wei Wuxian lay there limply, allowing himself to be dragged out. It saved him, the trouble anyways. He was dragged to the knees. To the knees. He was dragged to the East Hall, where it was as lively as could be. Surprisingly, there was no fewer townspeople gathered there than there was the same amount of people who went to the morning went to the night show. Got it? Good. Many of the servants and close family relations had come, still dressed in their inner robes, not having time to coif their hairs, panic painted on their faces. Lady Moss had stumbled in her seat as if she had only just awoken from having fainted. There were traces of tears on the sides of her cheeks, and rims of her eyes still wet. However, the moment Wei Wuxian was dragged in, her tears instantly transformed into bale- baleful glare. On the ground, on the ground there lay something that resembled the form of a human. The body was covered by a white sheet, and only its head was exposed. Lan Xishui. I'm still saying it wrong, and then it was Lan Xishu. Lan Xishu and those youths were bent down over it, inspecting the body solemnly and whispering to each other. Their words filtered into Wei Wuxian's ears. It hasn't been one incense time since he was discovered, right? After subduing the walking corpses, we were rushing to the courtyard, and the dead body was lying there in the corridor. The body was Mo Zijuan. Wei Wuxian swept a glance over him, then took another look in spite of himself. This corpse looked like Mo Zijuan, but at the same time not. While the facial features were clearly that of his cheap little cousin, the cheeks were deeply sunken, the eyeballs bulging, and his skin wrinkled. It was as if he had aged 20 years compared to the previous Mo Zijuan, who had been in the prime of his youth. It also seemed as if he had been sucked dry of the blood and flesh. He looked like a mere sack of bones dressed in an extremely thin veil of skin. If it wasn't, if he, if it could have been said that the Mo Zijuan from before was simply ugly, then his corpse now, oh God, was old and ugly. Just because he was old doesn't mean he's ugly. He just happens to be both. Wei Wuxian was just taking a detailed look when Madame Mo suddenly came charging over. Something shining flashed her. Yeah, something shining flashed in her hand. She was holding a dagger, moving as fast as his eyes saw. Lan Xishu knocked it out of her hand, but before he could say anything, Madame Mo was already screaming at him. "My son died a tragic death! I need to avenge him! What are you doing? Are you stopping me?" Wei Wuxian once again ducked behind Lan Xishu and shot back. "What does your son's tragic death have to do with me?" Lan Xishu had watched Wei Wuxian making a scene during the day, then later heard plenty of exaggerated rumors about this illegitimate son from the others. He felt great pity for this mentality. He felt pity for this mentally ill person and couldn't help but trying and speak up for the man. "Madame Mo, the state of your son's corpse is clearly the work of evil. Its blood, flesh, and spirit have been completely sucked out. He could not be the culprit." Madame Mo's chest heaved. "Why? What do you know? This lunatic's father is a cultivator, so he must have learned plenty of evil tricks." "Well, I'm also a cultivator, madam, so... What are you saying about that? What are you saying about me, baby? Huh? Huh? Lan Shizu looked back and took a glance at the seemingly half-witted Wei Wuxian. Madam, there is no evidence, so it is still best. The evidence is on my son's body! Madame Mo pointed at the corpse on the ground. Take a look yourself. Ajuan's dead body has already told me who his murderer is. Without waiting for the others to make a move, Wei Wuxian raised to pull back the sheet from head to toe. Mo Xishuan's corpse had something missing. His left arm, dun dun dun, from the shoulders down, had vanished as if it had sprouted wings. Madame Mo added, You see that? You all heard him today, right? What this lunatic said? That if Ajuan touched his things again, he will chop off Ajuan's arm? After her hysterics had, settled, she covered her face and sobbed, My poor Antoine! He never touched anything of this lunatic's. Not only was he slandered, he was killed by this maniac. Maniac! It was so endearing how many years had been since he'd heard himself described as such. Wei Wuxian pointed at himself, but he didn't have the words to rebuke that particular statement. He didn't know either. He didn't know either whether he really was mental or if Madame Mo was the one who was ill. After all, he had boasted about slaughtering entire sects, laying waste to millions, making blood flow like rivers, and other such things when he was younger. But this was all talk, most of the time at least. If he really could do all that, he would have tyrannized this world already. Madame Mo wasn't trying to avenge her son at all. She was only looking for someone to vent her anger on. Wei Wuxian didn't want to bother with with her. After a moment of thought, he reached into Mo Zizhuan's robe and searched, finally digging something out. And well, behold, when he unfolded that something, it was a spirit attraction flag. In the distance, In that instant, it dawned on him. He muttered under his breath, Mo Zizhuan brought this on his own. When Lan Zixu and the others saw that item taken out of Mo Zizhuan's robe, they also understood what had happened. Thinking back to the farce that had taken place during the day, it wasn't hard to deduce what had transpired earlier. Jesus, can I read? No. Okay, well, it didn't take a genius to know what had happened, basically, okay? You didn't have to be the smartest of all, cultivators to know that one. So, yeah. Earlier, Mo Zizhuan had lost considerable face due to Mo Zhuanyu's hysterics, filling him with hatred. He'd had, a mind to settle scores, but Mo Xuanyu had gone out frolicking, nowhere to be found. So Mo Zizhuan intended to wait until night time to teach Mo Xuanyu an underhanded lesson. Yet, when night came and he snuck out the door, as he passed by the west courtyard, he saw the spirit attraction flag planted atop the wall eaves. While there were strict instructions against outings at night, and the whole west the whole west courtyard was forbidden, and yada yada yada. Those black flags were not to be touched under any circumstances. Mo Zedong thought that that the cultivators purposely scared people off because they were afraid of others stealing their stuff, their precious spiritual weapons. He was unaware of just how dangerous and ominous the effect of the spirit attraction flags actually were, and that once he, held the flag, the flag would make the bearer a living target. Monty Zhuan's hands had never been clean. He'd grown addicted to stealing the talismans and spiritual tools belonging to his crazy older cousin. When he saw the magical objects, he couldn't help but feel, the itch to take them for himself, no matter the cost. Thus, while the owners of the flags were subduing walking corpses in the west courtyard, he secretly plucked one away. The flag formation utilizes 6 spiritual attraction flags, 5 of which were set up in the west courtyard using those used from the Lamb family as bait. However, they themselves were protected by the countless spiritual tools carried on their persons. Although Mo Zedong had only stolen the one flag, he didn't have any protective tools on him. So, you know, go after the weakest, they say. So him, yeah, he's the weakest link. They went after him. He, you know, naturally, the evil spirits were lured to him, of all people. If it had only been walking corpses, then it wouldn't have been a big deal. At most, he'd have a couple of, they probably would have bit him a little bit here and there, but it wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't have resulted in his death, at least. There would still have been a chance to save him. Yet, it just so happened that this spirit attraction flag had unintentionally summoned something more terrifying than the walking corpse, and it was precisely this unknown evil spirit that had killed Mo Zedong and robbed him of an arm. Wei Wuxian raised his wrist. Sure enough, a cut on his left arm was healed. It seemed the sacrificial ritual had acknowledged Mo Zedong's death as his doing. After all, the spirit attraction flag was Wei Wuxian's invention, so he'd hit the mark on out of pure luck. It was pure luck that the spirits were like, oh, maybe it was you. Who knows? Madame Mo was perfectly aware of her son's little flaws, but she would never admit to Mo Zedong. She would never admit that Mo Zedong had caused his own death. Anxious and aggravated, she picked up a teacup and hurled it at Wei Wuxian's face. If you hadn't made a scene and framed him in front of so many people yesterday, would he have gone out in the middle of the night? It's all your fault, you bastard! Wei Wuxian was already prepared and sidestepped to dodge the attack. Madame Mo then screamed at Lan Zixu. And you bunch of useless fools! What cultivators are you? What evil can you exercise? You can't even protect a child. Yuan is so young. Again, madam, he is not that young. He is actually, again, very close to Mo Xuanyu in age, I'm assuming. I don't think he's that young, girly pop. Those youths were so green and only had so much experience underneath their belts. They really hadn't detected anything unusual in this area, which was why they never thought there'd be such a ferocious evil at to begin with. At first, they'd been quite sorry because they felt themselves lacking, but after Madame Mo's indiscriminate tongue lashing, they were growing upset. After all, they came from a distinct clan. No one had ever dared treat them this way. The teachings of the Lan clan of Gusu were extremely strict. They forbade raising a hand against normal folk, and not even rudeness was allowed. Even though they were irritated, they had to force it down, causing dark expressions to cloud their faces. Wei Wuxian couldn't take it anymore. He thought, after so many years, the Lan family still acts this way. What's the use of all that self-restraint unless you're looking to suffocate yourself? Watch me. I'm the teacher you should be following. He spat out, who do you think you're yelling at? Do you really take them to be your servants? They came all this way to exercise evil for free, and now they owe you? Oh, please. How old is your son again? At least 17, right? A child? Oh, God, a child still? How old do you have to be to understand human words? Did they not instruct us again and again and again yesterday not to go near the west courtyard, not to touch anything in the formation? Your son snuck out in the middle of the night and to dally about. Is that my fault, or is it his own fault? Lan Jingyi and the others let out a breath, no longer looking as upset. Madame Mo was both extremely saddened and resentful, and her mind was filled with nothing but thoughts of death. More specifically, it wasn't thoughts of herself dying She wasn't planning on accompanying her son, no, but rather thoughts of having everyone in this world die, especially the one currently in front of her. Whenever something happened, she'd always order her husband around, so she shoved him. Call Call everyone in here. However, her husband was in a daze. Perhaps the shock of the death of his only son was too great, but he shoved her back, knocked down to the ground so abruptly Madame Mo was stunned. Next page. If this had been before, Madame Mo needn't have pushed him. As long as she raised her voice a tiny bit, he'd do whatever she said, yet today he dared fight back. The servants were all terrified by her expression, and a trembling adding helped her stand. Madame Mo grabbed her heart and said with a shaking voice, You get lost too! Her husband seemed not to have heard, adding shot Atong a number of looks, and Atong quickly dragged his master out. It was chaos within the East Hall. Seeing how the family was finally quieting down, Wei Wuxian went to inspect the corpse further. However, he had barely glanced at it before another high-pitched scream pierced through the door. The crowd inside the hall poured out and were greeted with the sight of the two bodies spasming on the ground in the east courtyard. One was lumped Atong alive, the other was collapsed on the ground, its body wrinkled and withered as if its blood and flesh had completely been sucked dry. Its left arm was already gone, and there was no blood flowing from the wound. The state of this corpse was exactly like Mo Zijuan. Oh. Madame Mo had just shaken off Ading's supporting hand, but when she saw the corpse lying on the ground, she was stunned in place. At last exhausted of the energy to throw more fits, she fainted. Wei Wuxian happened to be standing near her, so he caught her and passed her to Ading as she came running over. He then took a glance at his right hand. A cut there was gone. Madame Mo's husband had only stepped out of the threshold of the hall. He hadn't even entered the yard before he died tragically on the spot. Everything had happened within an instant. Lan Xishu, Lan Jingyi, and the others paled, but Lan Xishu was the first to compose himself. He questioned the slumped Atong. Did you see what it was? Atong was thoroughly horrified. His teeth clenched so hard that he couldn't utter a word. For the moment, only shaking his head. Lan Xishu, burning with impatience, instructed his peers to bring the boy inside before he turned to Lan Jingyi. Did you fire the signal? I did, Lan Jingyi replied. But if there are no seniors nearby who can come to offer assistance, our people will probably take at least an hour before they can make it here. What do we do? We don't even know what is in here right now. It was, of course, impossible for them to leave. If a clan's disciple only cared about escape, well, when running into evil spirits, then not only would they embarrass their clan, but themselves would be too, ashamed to go out again. The terrified folks of the Mo household could not leave with them either. The evil spirits was most likely among them. So it wouldn't have been useless if they fled. Lan Xishu clenched his teeth. Stay on guard until help arrives. Since the distress signal was already fired, other cultivators would soon come to their aid. In order to avoid adding to the present trouble, by all accounts, Wei Wuxian should have retreated. Best if whoever came was no one he knew. If it was someone he had crossed paths with before, or had fought with, then it was hard to tell what would happen. With the sacrificial rituals cursed on him, he could not leave the Mo estate yet. Besides, if the summoned creature could, take 2 lives within such a short span of time, then it was abnormally ferocious if Wei Wuxian dropped everything and left. Then by the time reinforcements arrived, the entire Mo estate would, have its streets filled with corpses missing their left arm, and surely some of those corpses would include the familial disciples of the Lan clan of Gusu. So he's more worried about the rest of the villagers and the Lan clan kids. To be fair, those would be the only people I would be worried about too. After a moment's deliberation, Wei Wuxian said to himself, "Let's end this quickly." Those youths were those youths were fledglings, each of them looking nervous. Despite that, they still scrupulously took their places to protect the Mo Manor and stuck talismans inside and outside the hall. The servants, Atong, had already been carried inside, and Lan Xishu checked his pulse with his left hand while his right massaged Madame Mo's back. He couldn't treat both at once and was in a sorry dilemma when suddenly Atong crawled up from the ground. Ading exclaimed, "Atong, you're awake?" Before any delight could cross her face, Atong raised his left hand and seized his own neck. Seeing this, Lan Shu targeted several of Atong's acupunctions with acupoints. Sorry, let me read that again. Seeing this, Lan Shu targeted several of Atong's acupoints with a triple tap of his hand apiece. Wei Wuxian knew that while the Lan clan appeared gentle on the surface, their arm strength was not gentle in the least. Using that method, anyone could be rendered thoroughly unable to move. However, Atong appeared not to have felt a thing. His left hand gripped harder and harder, his face scrunching more and more with pain. Liang Jingyi went over to pull at his left hand, but it was like trying to break off a chunk of iron immovable. Moments later, crack! Atong heard Atong's head drop down, and only then did the hand let go. But his neck was already broken. He had actually strangled himself before the eyes of all. Seeing this, Ading's voice trembled. "A ghost! There is an invisible ghost here, and it's made Atong strangle himself. Ah!" Her voice was shrill and sad, raising hairs on everyone's neck. They all believed her. Wei Wuxian determined it to be the exact opposite, however. This wasn't a malicious ghost. No, 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 no. He had seen the talisman those youths had chosen, and they were the spirits repelling type. They had plastered the entire cast hall with them airtight. If this really were a malicious spirit, then those talismans would have immediately burned with green flames. When it entered the East Hall, things would not be as quiet as they are right now. It wasn't that this group of youths were slow to react. It was that the intruder was truly ferocious in nature. The cultivation sects had strict criteria for determining whether something was a malicious ghost. One was considered such if it killed once a month for up to 3 months consequently. This was a criteria Wei Wuxian himself had set, and it was probably still in use nowadays. Dealing with this type was his specialty, to be fair, and based on what he'd seen, killing one every several days would make this creature a malicious ghost that would cause particularly frequent mischief. However, the thing had just killed 3 times in a row, and in a short time span too. Even accomplished cultivators would have been hard pressed to come up with a solution or a counter strategy. Never mind these novice juniors. Just as he was thinking this, the firefly flashed a blast of sinister wind wiped by, and every lantern and every candle in the entire courtyard, including the East Hall, was extinguished. So all of candles, torches, yeah, all of the entire area just went pitch black, basically. Screams erupted the instant the lights went out. The men and women pushed and shoved, falling and fleeing. Lan Jingyi shouted, "Stay where you are! Don't run! We'll arrest whoever runs!" Those were not words spoken without reason. Wreaking havoc in the dark and taking advantage of confusion was the nature of evil spirits. The more the people screamed and ran amok, the easier it would be to attract trouble unknowingly. It was extremely dangerous to be left alone or to lose one's head at a time like this, and yet it could not be helped that everyone was scared out of their wits. So how could they pay attention to and adhere to what they were being asked to do? They couldn't follow any instructions, they were too terrified. It didn't take long before the East Hall fell quiet, with only the sound of light breaths and faint sniffing. Most had probably left. In the darkness, a firelight suddenly flared. It was Lan Shu who had lit an illumination talisman. The flames of the illumination talisman could not be extinguished by the sinister wind that carried evil, and he used this talisman to relight the candles anew, while the rest of the youths went around to console the others. Under the lights, Wei Wuxian took a nonchalant glance at his wrist. Another cut had healed. It was then that he suddenly realized the number of cuts were wrong. There had been 2 cuts on his left wrist and 2 on his right. One cut healed after Mo Zizhuan's death, another cut healed after the death of Mo Zizhuan's father, and the third after the death of the servant Atong. Tallying that up, there should have been 3 cuts healed, leaving only the cut with the deepest wound and the deepest hatred. But now there was nothing on his wrist. Not a single cut was left. Wei Wuxian trusted that Madame Mo was most definitely among those who Mo Xuanyu wished to seek revenge upon. The longest and the deepest gash was likely for her, yet it had surprisingly vanished. Was it Mo Xuanyu who had suddenly let it go and abandoned his hatred? That was impossible. His soul had been sacrificed as the price for summoning Wei Wuxian. So, in order for the cut to heal, Madame Mo had to die unless... ... He slowly moved his gaze from his wrist to Madame Mo, who had recently rose and was surrounded by the crowd. Her face was white as a sheet. Unless... ... She was already dead. Wei Wuxian was sure something had already possessed Madame Mo. If that thing was not a spirit, then what could it be? Suddenly, Ding cried, "Hand! Hand! Atung's left hand!" Lan Xishu moved the illumination talisman over Atung's corpse. Sure enough, his left arm had also vanished. The left arm! In the flash of a second, everything was clear. The creature causing mischief and the vanishing left arms formed a connection that clicked in Wei Wuxian's mind. He suddenly snorted and blurted out in laughing. He was laughing, okay? Lan Jingji huffed. That dummy, how can he laugh at a time like this? But then he realized that, given the man was a dummy, what was the point of bothering with him in the first place? However, Wei Wuxian grabbed Lan Jingji's sleeve and shook his head. No, 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 no. Lan Jingji, irritated, tried to put his sleeves back. No what? Not a dummy? Stop playing around. No one's got time for you. Wei Wuxian pointed at Father Mo's and Atong's corpses on the ground. That's not them. Lan Zixu stopped Lan Jingyi, who was about to blow up. He asked, "You said that's not them. What do you mean?" Wei Wuxian replied solemnly, "This isn't Mo Zizhuan's dad, and that is not Atong's either." with his face smeared in makeup. The more solemn he was, the more it felt like he really was mentally ill. However, under the haunting candlelight, his words were surprisingly hair-raising. Lan Shu was stunned for a moment and questioned him in spite of himself. Why is that? Next page. Wei Wuxian said smugly, because of the hand. There's not a left hand. They always beat me with their right hands. I know that much at least. Lan Jingyi lost his patience and spat. What are you smug for? Look at this place. Look at his pleased face. Lan Shu, however, had broken out in a cold sweat from the shock. Thinking back, Ah Tung had strangled himself using his left hand, and when Madame Mo's husband pushed his wife down, he also used his left hand. But during the day when Mo Xuanyu had been causing a ruckus in the East Hall, those two had been busy trying to chase him out using their habitual right hand. Surely they couldn't both have turned into left-handers all of a sudden, right? Before the deaths? Like, that doesn't make sense. Although the cause was presently unknown, in order to investigate what was causing the mischief, they had to start with those left arms. Having come to this conclusion, Lan Zixu sent a bewildered look at Wei Wuxian. Despite himself, he thought, for him to suddenly say something like that really doesn't seem like a coincidence. Wei Wuxian only continued to laugh cheekily, knowing that the hint had been too conspicuous, but there was no other way to say this. Thankfully, Lan Zixu didn't dig into it, thinking since Mo Guanzu was willing to call attention to it, for me it most likely wasn't done out of ill intent. He moved his gaze from Wei Wuxian, swept it over Adding, faintly from who had fainted from weeping, and landed his eyes on Madame Mo. His eyes traveled down from her face to her hands. Her arms were hanging by her side, mostly hidden in the sleeves, revealing only the tips of her fingers. The fingers of her right hand were snow white and slim, truly the hands of a woman who lived in privilege without any hardship or labor. However, the fingers of her left hand, well, that was a different story. They were longer and thicker than those of the right. The knuckles were curled, filled with strength. How was that the hand of a woman? It was clearly the hand of a man. Hold her down, Nancy, she shouted. The youth had already Jesus, can I read answers? No. The youth had already twisted Madame Mo's arm back in a hold. With a "Forgive me," Nancy Shu pulled out his talisman. He was ready to slap it down when Madame Mo's left arm twisted at an impossible angle, aiming for his throat. The only way for a living human to twist their arms that way would be if their bones were broken. The hand's movement was fast, and it would have seized his neck had it not been for Lan Jinyi tackling Lan Zixi to the ground, Gah! And blocking the attacking for him. There was a flash of firelight. That hand had only just grabbed Lan Jinyi's shoulder when she had only touched Lanji's shoulder when green flames flared to life at the same spot. It instantly loosened its grip, having escaped death. Lan Zishi was just about to thank Lan Jingyi for coming to his rescue when he saw the half of Lan Jingyi's uniform had been burned to ashes, making him look incredibly unkempt. Flustered and enraged, Lan Jingyi stripped off the unburned half of his uniform as he looked back and yelled, "Why did you kick me, stupid lunatic? Did you just want me to be killed?" Wei Wuxian scurried away, hugging his head. "It wasn't me, it wasn't me." It was most certainly he who kicked Lan Jingyi. I like how they're not even trying to be like, no, it wasn't. It was definitely him. The outer robe of the Lance family was tightly embroidered with spells and incantations inside its lining to provide protection. However, the effect would have been nullified after one use when encountering a formidable creature such as this. Under these under these dire circumstances, Wei Wuxian could only give Lan Jingyi a kick to make him use his body to shield Lan Jingyi's neck. He's like, buddy, oh pal, I don't have the same armor you got. I believe in you. I believe you can fly. Kick the baby. Lan Jingyi was going to yell some more, but Madame Mo collapsed on the ground. The flesh and blood of her face had been drained so utterly that only a layer of skin pressed against her skull remained. The man's arm that did not belong to her fell off of her left shoulder. Yet its fingers could still move at its will. It was as if it were stretching, and the pulsing of its veins clearly visible. That thing was the evil that had been summoned by the spirit attraction flag. Dismemberment was a standard violent death. It was a little more dignified than the way Wei Wuxian had died. Though, sorry, I kind of burped. Oopsie. I'm gonna read that again. Dismemberment was a standard violent death. It was a little more dignified than the way Wei Wuxian had died, though not by much. Unlike being crushed to ashes, the limbs of a dismembered corpse retained a part of the grudges of the deceased. One would yearn to return to its body, yearn to die a complete corpse. Thus, it would also attempt to seek out the other parts of his body. Once found, the corpse would then perhaps rest in peace and, satisfaction, or perhaps wreak greater havoc if the rest of its original body wasn't found. However, a limb could only go for the second best option. What was the second best option, you ask? Seek out the bodies of living humans and make do, just as this left arm had demonstrated. Devour the left of the living Devour the left arm of the living, take its place, and suck out the living husk human's body, spirit, blood, and flesh. Then abandon the body to continue searching for the next host. This would continue until all parts of his original corpse were found. Once the arm attached itself to a body, it was an instant death for the host. Though prior to their blood and flesh being completely eaten, the human could still move normally under the arm's control, as if still alive. After the arm had been summoned, the first vessel it found was Mo Zijuan. The second vessel was Mo Zijuan's father. When Madame Mo had told her husband to get lost, he'd acted out of character and pushed her. At first, Wei Wuxian had thought it was because the man was, heartbroken because of his son's death, and that he had also had enough of his wife's unreasonable behavior. In retrospect, that had not been the demeanor of a father who had just lost his son. That had not been the stupor of despair. It had been stillness, the stillness of the dead. The third vessel was Atong, and the fourth, well, that was Madame Mo. The left arm took advantage of the chaos when the lights went out earlier to migrate to her body, and when Madame Mo was killed, the last cut on Wei Wuxian's wrist had already vanished with her demise. Seeing how the talismans were useless, but their clothes were not, all the Lan youths each stripped off their outer robes and threw them on the left arm, covering and wrapping it in layers upon layers of robes, like a thick white cocoon. I was gonna say coconut, but cocoon makes more sense. A moment later, this ball of white clothes ignited with a whoosh, the wicked green flames blazing in the skies. Though it worked for the time being, it would not last long. Once the uniforms were completely burned, that arm would break free from their ashes. While no one was paying attention, Wei Wuxian ran straight for the west courtyard. Over 1,000 walking corpses those youths had captured were standing silent in the yard. A spell had been drawn upon the ground to seal them inside the boundary. Wei Wuxian stopped stomped on one of the characters, destroying the entire array. After two claps of the walking corpses jerked, their white eyes opened abruptly as if they had been shocked awake by an explosion of thunder. "Wake up," Wei Wuxian said. "Time to get to work." He never needed any complicated spells or summoning incantations to control corpse puppets. The most straightforward commands would suffice. The walking corpse at the very front quivered as they struggled to shuffle a few steps. Then, the moment they approached... Next page. The moment they approached Wei Wuxian, they fell face first to the ground, like living humans, as if their legs had grown weak from terror. Not knowing whether to laugh or cry at this, Wei Wuxian clapped twice more, but much softer this time. However, these walking corpses had probably been born at the Mo estate and had died here as well. They'd never seen this world, so while they instinctively obeyed the summoner's command, they were also terrified of the summoners for some reason, lying on the ground, whimpering, too afraid to get up. Aww, even the little walking corpses were scared. They were like, "I don't want, I'm scared." The crueler the evil spirit, the easier it was for Wei Wuxian to manipulate it. These walking corpses had never gone through his training, so they could not withstand his direct control. He had no materials at his disposal to immediately create a device that could ease their fear either, and nothing with which to improve. As he watched the blazing green flames from the east courtyard gradually die down, an idea suddenly came to his mind. Why go out searching to find a cruel and vicious diseased one, steeped in extreme hatred? The East Hall already has one. More than one, actually. He darted back to the East Court. Lan Zixu's first plan had come to an end, so he devised another. The youths all unsheathed their long swords, planting them in the ground to form a fence of blades. The ghost's arms smashed about within the enclosure. It was taking all their energy just to hold the hits in place and prevent them from being expelled by the force. No one had the time to pay attention to who was going and in and out the hall. They were just really focused on that. They couldn't look anywhere else. They had to focus. Focus, brothers, focus. Wei Wuxian stepped into the East Hall and yanked up the corpses of Madame Mo and Mo Zizhuan, one in each hand, and in a low voice he gave a command. "Awake yet?" At the sound of his voice, the souls returned, and an instant later Madame Mo and Mo Zizhuan opened their white eyes and let out a shrill shriek unique to malicious ghosts at the moment of their resurrection. Amidst the high and low shrieks, another corpse crawled to its feet in trepidation, calling out feebly without a voice that could not have been any softer. It was Madame Mo's husband. The cries were loud enough to, the hatred plentiful. Wei Wuxian was extremely pleased. "Recognize that arm out there?" He smiled. "Tear it apart," he ordered. The three members of the Mo family were like three blasts of black... Let me read that again. The three members of the Mo family were like three blasts of black wind, blowing each other forth in an instant. That left arm had broken a long sword, just as it was about to break out of the pen. Three left armless, feeless corpses came lunging at each other. Come lunging at it. Oops. Even aside from the fear of disobeying Wei Wuxian's command, the three carried an intense hatred for the creature that had killed them, and they unleashed all their fury upon the ghost arm. The one leading the attack was the undoubtedly Madame Mo, once reanimated female corpses were often particularly ferocious. Her hair was flying wild, her white eyes crawling with red, and her nails had burst in length exponentially. She was foaming at the mouth, her shrill cries, particularly raising the roofs, completely crazed. Mosey John followed his mother closely, working in concert with her to both tear and bite at the left arm, while his father trailed behind them, filling in the gaps between the other two's attacks. The land youths, who had been struggling to hang on earlier, were all stunned. They had only ever heard of such a thing between fierce. Ooh, next page. Oh my god, I just saw the image. If that's not. Is that Daddy Land? Oh my god, Daddy Lanjan, Papa Lanjan. I'm just gonna put the photo right here, right now, because he looks so beautiful. Look at our boy. Look who arrived. Oh my god, he looks so good. We have to continue. Oh my god. Oh god. Just look at the image. Look at the image. Look how beautiful he looks. Okay. Where was I? Oh, sorry. I got distracted. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. They had only ever heard of such fighting between fierce corpses from sundry books and hearsay. This was the first time they had ever witnessed such a gory scene, and they gawked, unable to avert their eyes. They only had one thought in their minds. This is so exciting! The three corpses and the one arm were in the throes of battle. Suddenly, Mosey Juan shrieked as he dodged. That arm had swiped at his abdomen, and several robes of his intestines dropped from the chair. Madame Mole snarled intensely. Incensant. Yeah, whatever. At the sight of this, I got lost. Where was I? Oh yeah, she pulled her son behind her to shield him while escalating her attacks, her nails slicing through air as sharply as blades made of iron and steel. However, Wei Wuxian could tell she was slowly losing against the arm. Every three freshly dead fierce corpses working together could not subdue this one arm. Wei Wuxian watched the battle closely. He curled his tongue slightly, holding a sharp whistle back between his lips as he hesitated to let it loose. If he whistled, he could evoke great hatred within the controlled fierce corpses, and that would perhaps turn the tables. However, it would be difficult to ensure no one noticed that he was the instigator. In the span of a second, that hand moved as fast as lightning, ruthless and precise as it snatched Madame Mole's neck. Seeing how the Mole family was being steadily beaten back, Wei Wuxian was just about to let loose the whistle he had. He was about to let loose the whistle he held under his tongue when, right then, two strums from a guqing sounded in the far distance. The two notes were skillfully played, ethereal and clear, carrying with them the tinkling bleakness of windswept pines. The collection of demonic evils that were in the middle of a brawl all froze. The youth of the Lan clan of Gusu immediately beamed as if they had been rescued. Lan Shu raised a hand to wipe away the blood on his face, and then looked up, calling out in delight, Hong Wen-jun! And there is Daddy Lanjan, baby! Oh god, I'm sorry. This image, I'm gonna put it again on screen. It's so fucking beautiful. Like, oh my god, he looks so good. Like, how can how can someone make such a beautiful being? Like, hats off to the artist. Hats off. I could never. Oh my god. The moment he heard the cry of the sobriquet and the distant gooching, Wei Wuxian turned to leave. Another strum. This time, the note was higher pitched, piercing through the sky like the austere harshness of winter's first approach. The three fierce corpses shrank back while covering one ear with their right hand at the same time. However, it was impossible to block out the iridescentation tone ir- iridescentation tone of the Land Clan of Gusu in such a way they only had managed to back up a few steps before there was the faint sound of cracking in their skulls. As for that left arm, after engaging in such a ferocious fight, hearing the sound of the strings now made it suddenly drop to the ground. Though its fingers still twitching, the arm was already lying limp in silence. After a short silence, the group of youths couldn't help but erupt in loud cheers. The sound filled with the jubilation of having survived. They had endured a terrifying night, and now that help from the clan had finally arrived, they couldn't have cared less if there was harshly punished later for disgracing the sect with a breach of etiquette. While they waved toward the moon, Lan Shu suddenly noticed something missing. He tugged at Lan Jingyi. "Where is he?" Lan Jingyi was busy being happy and replied, "Who? He who?" "That Mogonzi." Lan Shu replied, "Huh? Why are you looking for that lunatic? Who knows, maybe he was scared of getting beaten up by me and ran off somewhere." ... Lan Shu knew that Lan Jingyi was unmindful and straightforward, never thinking deeply on things or harboring suspicion. He thought to himself, "I'll just wait until Huang Wanjun is done here, then report to him about the man and the incident." The Mo estate slumbered soundly, although whether the peace was real or fake was difficult to tell. Even though there had been a bloody corpse fight in the Mo Manor's east and west courtyard, no one was getting up in the middle of the night to watch it. One had to pick and choose the right spectacle to watch, and a spectacle with such intense screaming was best avoided. Wei Wuxian rapidly destroyed any remnant evidence of the sacrificial ritual, then ran out the door. Of all people who could have come in, it had to be the Lan family of all people. Wait, let me read that again. Of all the people who could have come, it had to be the Lan family. Of all people to come, it just had to be Lan Wangji. Daddy Lan Wangji for you, baby. This was someone who he Jesus. This was someone with whom he had once crossed paths and fought, so he retreated in a hurry, anxious to find a steed. As he passed by a courtyard, he noticed a spotted donkey tied next to a large milestone, chewing something in its mouth. It seemed a little surprised when it saw him, some dashing over, giving him a side eye, like a person would. Eh? The instant Wei Wuxian met his eyes, he was immediately moved by its disdain in its gaze. He went up to it, yanked off its rope, and started dragging it out. The spotted donkey loudly complained. Wei Wuxian cajoled as he dragged, coaxing it in every way possible. It moved it along, stepping on it in the lighting of dawn. Then they clattered onto the main road. And that is the end of chapter 2. Holy cow, that was a long chapter. Now you guys know why it took me a while to read. It was actually because the chapters are too long. I'm not gonna lie. Pero finally, chapter 2 over. If you guys been liking my reading, and following along and whatnot, please like, comment, and subscribe. like I said, I do plan on reading the entirety of MDZS, the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, because I really like it. I've already read the manhwa and I've watched the live action adaptation. I've also seen the animes and whatnot, and they're absolutely amazing and just I'm gonna put some links down below in the not in the comments, in the description, so you guys can buy the books if you want to. Absolutely amazing. I love it so much. I love the world, the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. I do want to finish reading it, but those chapters are so long. But you know what? They're worth it. They're worth their length because they're really, really good. But other than that, I do want to say Happy Chinese New Year. Hope you have a good day, night, wherever you are, however you are. Stay safe and ba 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 ba.